The hidden puppeteers, how emotional energies secretly hijack our shadow power. There is a truth few dare to speak, and even fewer are ready to embody. It's this: power alone is not sovereignty. Even if we are dark chosen ones, those of us born with a frequency too raw, too intense, too unfiltered for the world, we are not exempt from being hijacked. Not by others, not by systems, but by something far more invisible, far more intimate: emotional energies. These are not just feelings we experience. These are living entities that, when unconscious, begin to run our vibration. And when it comes to shadow power, these energies don't scream. They whisper. They don't dominate. They influence. Quietly, constantly, masterfully. And if we don't name them, if we don't bring them into the light of our awareness, they will continue to pilot our rituals, our relationships, and even our mission without us knowing. The first emotional energy that often controls us is suppressed grief. This is not the kind of grief that comes when someone dies. It's the grief of unlived truth, the grief of the child who never got to speak, the grief of the warrior who never got to rest, the grief of the soul that knew its purpose before it knew its name, but had to keep it buried just to survive. We carry this grief in our bones, and what makes it dangerous is that it doesn't scream, it sinks. It anchors our shadow vibration in a frequency of mourning, and we begin to attract others who are also emotionally repressed. We think we're helping. We think we're holding space. But often we're just recreating the same cycle, being the burial ground for others' pain, because we haven't yet mourned our own. The question is, when was the last time you let yourself grieve not a person, but a version of yourself that never got to live? The second energy is resentment masked as righteousness. Let's be honest, many of us use truth-telling as a sword, not a salve. We say we're being honest, but what we're really doing is bleeding from wounds we haven't cleaned. And resentment is seductive. It makes us feel powerful. It gives our pain a purpose. But in truth, it's a poison. It calcifies our shadow. It turns our sacred rage into bitterness. And the real tragedy? Most of us carry resentment toward our own past selves. Not just people, but the version of us who let it happen, who stayed too long, who didn't speak up. And instead of forgiving that version, we perform power as a way to avoid vulnerability. This keeps our vibration distorted, because power without compassion always burns the wrong person first, ourselves. Now, the third emotional energy is perhaps the most cunning, unacknowledged envy. Yes, even the spiritually gifted feel envy, especially the dark chosen ones, because we often walk alone. We often watch others rise in the light while we're still battling our demons in silence. We see them being celebrated for the very truths we've been punished for speaking. And deep down, that creates a fracture, a quiet voice that says, "Why them? Why not me?" And instead of naming it, we spiritualize it. We say things like, "I don't care about attention," or "I'm not meant to be seen." But that's not humility. That's avoidance. And envy, when unacknowledged, turns inward. It becomes self-abandonment. We begin to dim our own fire just to avoid the pain of not being seen. But the truth is, your envy is not evil. It's a signal. It's your soul saying, there's something you desire that you've convinced yourself you're not worthy of. Can you sit with that? The fourth emotional energy is shame disguised as discipline. This one is subtle, especially for those of us on a spiritual path. We think we're being devoted, ascetic, focused, but underneath that, many of us are just afraid of being soft. We restrict joy. We avoid pleasure. We silence play. Not because they're wrong, but because we're ashamed of our own humanity. Somewhere along the way, we internalize the belief that to be powerful, we have to be above emotion, above need, above desire. So we punish ourselves. We fast too long. We isolate too hard. We suppress too deeply. And in doing so, we disconnect from the very source of our magic presence in the body. We become spiritual performers, not embodied beings. Ask yourself, are you being disciplined, or are you just afraid to be fully human? And now we arrive at the fifth energy, fear masquerading as intuition. This is a major one. So many of us confuse the two. We say, my gut says no, but really it's our trauma flaring up. We say, I'm protecting my energy, but really we're avoiding intimacy. We say, that doesn't feel aligned, but what we're actually saying is, that feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. You see, fear is not loud when it controls us. It's convincing. And when our shadow vibration is high, fear doesn't make us submissive, it makes us controlling. We try to orchestrate reality. We try to predict outcomes. We micromanage manifestations, and all the while we call it guidance. But intuition is not control. Intuition is trust. And you cannot trust when you're still ruled by fear dressed in spiritual robes. These emotional energies, grief, resentment, envy, shame, fear, are not just feelings. They're frequencies, and when they go unnamed, they attach themselves to our shadow power. They ride it like a wave. They shape our words, our boundaries, our rituals, our relationships. And because we're powerful, they manifest quickly. That's why dark chosen ones must walk with radical self-awareness. Because when you're this energetically potent, even your unconscious emotions become spells. Even your silence becomes a command. And if you don't know what's moving through you, you won't know what you're creating. So I ask you, what emotional energy are you mistaking as your truth right now? What have you spiritualized that actually needs to be felt? What part of you is still trying to earn your right to exist instead of simply claiming it? Because the truth is, the path of the dark chosen one isn't just about mastering the shadow. It's about mastering the subtle, the quiet emotional undercurrents that shape our magic without our consent. And only when we bring them into the light, only when we name them, feel them, and integrate them can our vibration become clean, fierce, free. You are not meant to be perfect. You are meant to be whole, and wholeness begins with honesty. Emotional possession, how subtle feelings hijack your power and rewrite your reality. We often think of possession as something external: spirits, entities, curses from other realms. But the most dangerous form of possession is internal. It's emotional. It's subtle. It's invisible to the untrained eye. And yet it's capable of reprogramming your entire field. As dark chosen ones, we are not just spiritually sensitive, we are emotionally magnetic. The emotional energies we carry don't just affect us. They amplify through us. They attach to our thoughts, our rituals, our presence. And if left unchecked, they begin to write false scripts into our reality. Scripts that feel true, but are rooted in distortion. That's emotional possession. And it happens not because we are broken, but because we are open. Let's go deeper into the sixth emotional energy, unspoken guilt. This one is almost always hidden in the subconscious. We don't say it out loud. We don't even think it consciously. But it lives in the way we hesitate to receive. It lives in the way we feel uncomfortable when things finally go well. It lives in the way we sabotage success, delay healing, or attract people we have to fix. Why? Because guilt says, I don't deserve ease. And that belief becomes a command. We create detours. We complicate the path. We unconsciously lower our frequency, not because we want pain, but because we think pain is what we've earned. And here's the deeper twist. Most of this guilt doesn't come from this lifetime. It comes from soul memory, past life choices, karmic debts, ancestral burdens. And if we don't clear it, it becomes a silent architect of our reality. Have you ever noticed how sometimes, when things are going well, you feel uneasy? That's not intuition telling you it's wrong. That's unprocessed guilt rising to the surface, trying to maintain the emotional status quo. You've been carrying guilt for so long, joy feels like betrayal. And unless you name that guilt, unless you sit with it, it will keep writing the same story. I must suffer to be spiritual. I must earn love through sacrifice. I must prove my worth through pain. But that's a lie. You don't have to suffer to grow. You don't need to pay for existing. You are not here to atone, you are here to expand. Now we move into the seventh emotional energy, spiritual exhaustion disguised as detachment. This one is insidious. It looks like wisdom. It sounds like clarity. But it's actually burnout. It's the part of us that says, I don't care anymore, when we actually care too much and don't know what to do with it. It's when we say, I'm above all this, not because we're enlightened, but because we're tired. Tired of the cycles. Tired of being the strong one. Tired of carrying the unseen weight. And instead of admitting that, we detach, we become numb. We call it neutrality, but it's really just resignation in disguise. This form of emotional possession is particularly dangerous because it makes us retreat from our mission. We stop creating. We stop connecting. We stop sharing our truth not because it's no longer alive, but because we're too drained to let it out. And the world begins to feel far away. Our dreams become foggy. Our body becomes heavy. And we think, maybe I'm just meant to be invisible. But that's not truth. That's fatigue. And fatigue is not weakness, it's a signal. A sacred message from your system saying you've been giving too much without receiving. You've been channeling energy without replenishing it. You've been carrying others without checking what you're carrying for yourself. So how do we break free from this emotional hijacking? It begins with radical, ruthless self-honesty. We must stop spiritualizing our trauma responses. We must stop calling our coping mechanisms gifts. We must learn to ask ourselves, in every moment of stillness, is this truth, or is this a survival pattern I've dressed in sacred language? That is the question that opens the door. Because when we stop lying to ourselves in subtle ways, our vibration purifies. And when our vibration purifies, our shadow becomes clarified, focused, liberated, aligned. But let's make this real. Let's talk about how these emotional energies show up in our daily lives as dark chosen ones. You might go quiet in a conversation not because you're practicing silence, but because your grief has shut your throat. You might end a relationship not because it's not aligned, but because your fear of being seen has reached its limit. You might isolate not because you value solitude, but because your envy has made other people feel like reflections of your own pain. We must learn to discern, to feel the difference between sacred action and emotional reaction, between soul movement and shadow possession. And this is where the deeper initiation begins. Not with rituals, not with mantras, but with sitting in front of your own raw, unfiltered emotion and saying, I see you. I name you. I honor you. But you no longer get to drive. You become the conscious host of your emotional world. You don't exile your feelings. You integrate them. You let them speak, but you do not let them command. And in doing so, you reclaim your most sacred gift, spiritual authorship. The ability to write your own vibration with clarity, power, and precision. Here's something very few will tell you. The greatest threat to your mission is not darkness. It's distortion. It's when your power is used by emotions you haven't acknowledged. And the longer you ignore them, the more they build, the more they leak, the more they shape your reality in ways that no longer reflect your truth. This is why the dark chosen ones must become emotional warriors, not just energy masters. Because the war is not only in the ether, it's in your chest, your belly, your solar plexus. It's in the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you receive. So ask yourself again and again, who is speaking through me right now? Is it my soul or an emotional echo I haven't yet made peace with? Clarity is not given. It is earned through radical self-inquiry. And only when you can hear your emotions clearly can you choose your path consciously. You are not your guilt. You are not your fear. You are not your exhaustion. You are the one witnessing it all and choosing something higher. The Return of the Master: How to Transmute Emotion into Divine Command. There comes a moment in every dark chosen one's journey when the question changes. We stop asking, what is controlling me? And begin asking, what can I create with what I've carried? That's the moment of return, the return of the Master within you. Not the master who dominates or avoids, but the one who transmutes. The one who has walked through the inferno of emotional distortion, not to escape it, but to reclaim it. Because true mastery is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to command energy through emotion. That is the secret of the ancient ones. That is the forgotten art we were born to remember. You see, emotion is not the enemy of power. Emotion is power when it is purified. Every feeling you've ever had, rage, grief, desire, terror, contains raw voltage, spiritual electricity. But when that voltage is tangled in story, in shame, in suppression, it becomes chaotic. It leaks. It burns. But when you take the time to extract the frequency from the narrative, to separate the energy from the ego, you become a living conductor of divine force. You begin to speak and timelines shift. You begin to breathe and rooms recalibrate. You begin to feel, and the universe listens. So how do we do this? How do we transmute emotion into divine command? The first step is to stop labeling certain emotions as bad or low vibration. That programming is a virus. It was designed to keep you fragmented. Your rage is not low. Your grief is not weak. Your fear is not a flaw. Every emotion is a messenger, and every messenger carries a code. When you shame the emotion, you block the message. When you block the message, you delay your mastery. So the first practice is this: feel everything but interpret nothing too quickly. Let the emotion rise. Let it speak. Let it move. Don't rush to label it. Don't rush to fix it. Just witness it with reverence. Second, you must learn to move emotion through the body. Not just in your mind. Not just in your journal, but in your flesh. Emotion is energy in motion. If it doesn't move, it stagnates. It festers. It becomes a haunting. So scream, breathe, shake, dance. Stamp your feet into the earth. Moan into your pillow like an ancient priestess. Let your spine undulate like a serpent, remembering the first rhythm of earth. This is not performance. This is ritual. This is you declaring, I am not afraid of what I feel. I am willing to embody it fully so it no longer controls me silently. The third practice is alchemical. Once the emotion has been felt and moved, you must extract its code. Ask it, what are you here to show me? What truth have I denied? What power have I buried? Grief often hides your love. Rage often hides your boundaries. Fear often hides your intuition. Shame often hides your purity. Begin to map your emotions like sacred archetypes. See them not as obstacles, but as initiators. Every emotion is a threshold. Cross it consciously, and you gain access to a new layer of your divine design. And here's where the magic begins. Once you've transmuted the raw emotion into clarity, you can now command with precision. Your words become spells. Your presence becomes an invocation. You no longer leak energy, you direct it. You no longer react, you respond with resonance. You no longer chase alignment, you broadcast it. This is what it means to be a master of shadow vibration. not to be emotionless, but to be emotionally sovereign. Let me give you an example. Say you feel sudden grief, old, ancient, sticky. Instead of pushing it down or trying to fix it, you drop in. You sit with it. You breathe into your belly. You let the tears come without a story. You listen. And in that silence, you hear the echo, "I miss who I used to be." Or, "I never got to be fully loved." Now you're not just crying, you're decoding. You're receiving the message. You move the grief. You honor the innocence underneath. And then you speak. "I now call in the love I was once denied." That's divine command. That's emotional mastery, not bypassing. Alchemy. This is the return of the master, when you no longer fear your emotional landscape, when you walk into the underworld of your own psyche and light a torch, not to burn it down, but to see it clearly. And the more you do this, the more your vibration becomes unshakable. Not because it's pure light, but because it's integrated. That includes everything. And a vibration that includes everything is a vibration that can create anything. And here's the deepest secret of all. When you fully transmute your emotional energy, you become lightning in human form. You walk with the weight of ancient temples behind your eyes. You speak with the clarity of thunder. You love with the power of oceans. And the universe responds not because you begged, not because you performed, but because you became resonant with truth. The kind of truth that cannot be faked, cannot be copied, cannot be sold. Only embodied. So as we come to the close of this transmission, I ask you the question that will define your next evolution. What emotion have you been afraid to feel? Because deep down you know if you truly felt it, you'd never be the same again? That emotion is your doorway. That feeling is your fire. That shadow is your sword. And when you wield it with love, you no longer just survive the spiritual path. You shape it. You are not here to manage your emotions. You are here to master their magic. You are not here to ascend away from the world and command it with clarity. And make no mistake, not the masked you, not the righteous you, not the safe spiritual you, but the raw, resonant, electrified master who walks into the temple of shadow and finally realizes this was never the enemy. This was always the throne.